Emily got home from work earlier than usual. The interstate, which was usually a nightmare on a Friday, had cleared up for once, a rare stroke of luck. She walked up to the third floor, pulled out her keys, and was just about to slide one into the lock when she heard music. It was quiet, muffled, but clearly coming from inside her apartment. Mark didn't like music. In the 12, soon to be 13, years of their marriage, Emily could count on one hand the number of times her husband had put on anything other than the TV. He considered background melodies an irritating noise that interfered with his focus, and now the smooth sounds of jazz were flowing from their apartment. Emily froze, key in hand. Her heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. Quietly, very quietly, she turned the knob and opened the door just enough to peek through the crack. In the entryway were a pair of shoes that weren't hers, red, patent leather, on a high stiletto heel. Emily would never wear shoes like that. Too flashy, too bright for her calm, measured personality. She wore comfortable ballet flats or neat pumps in neutral tones. A woman's laugh drifted from the living room, bright, carefree, a little coy. Emily gently closed the door and stepped back onto the landing. She sat down on the cold step, leaning her back against the railing, and stared at a fixed point on the opposite wall. 12 years. For 12 years, she had built this marriage, like building a house, brick by brick, patiently and diligently. She had learned to make meatloaf exactly the way his mother did, even though she hated the smell of cooked ketchup. She stayed silent when Mark worked late and didn't make a scene when he forgot their anniversary. She had given him their son, Leo, who was now 11, and spending the week at her mother's place in the countryside, and this was her reward for all those years. Red heels in the entryway and a woman's laughter in the living room. Emily took out her phone and checked the time. 5:30 p.m. She usually got back around 7, sometimes later. Mark had at least an hour to get his guest out and destroy the evidence. A strange calm washed over her. There were no tears, no urge to storm into the apartment and make a scene, only a cold, crystal-clear clarity, the kind you get on a frosty winter morning when the air is transparent and every sound carries for miles. She quietly descended the stairs and went outside. She found a bench in the courtyard, sat down, and lit a cigarette for the first time in 5 years, after having quit for the sake of her son's health. She'd bought it from some teenagers hanging out near the building, handing them a crumpled bill from her pocket. The nicotine hit her head, and her thoughts began to flow more evenly. Who was she? This woman in the red heels. Emily mentally sifted through all of Mark's acquaintances, all the colleagues she'd seen at company holiday parties. The shoes looked expensive, so probably not a simple secretary. Though, who knew? Maybe it was a coincidence? Maybe Emily had misunderstood everything? No, she knew with certainty she hadn't made a mistake. Her intuition, which she had suppressed for 12 years, had finally broken through and was speaking loud and clear. This wasn't the first time. This had been going on for a while. Emily remembered Mark's business trips, which had become more frequent over the last year. She remembered the new shirts he bought for himself, though he used to hate shopping. She remembered how he'd started taking better care of himself, joined a gym, started wearing cologne. All the signs had been there. She just hadn't wanted to see them. At 6:30, Emily stood up from the bench and walked toward her building. She climbed to the 3rd floor, stomping loudly on the steps, and unlocked the door with her key, deliberately rattling the keychain. "Mark, I'm home." Her husband came out of the kitchen with a dish towel in his hands. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair slightly damp as if he'd just showered. "You're home early," he said, kissing her on the cheek. Emily's gaze swept over the entryway. The red heels were gone. The music wasn't playing. The apartment smelled of air freshener, the lavender-scented one Mark never used. "The traffic was light," she replied, taking off her shoes. "Can you believe it? A miracle. Are you eating? I heated up some chili. I'll have some." She walked into the kitchen, sat at the table, and watched her husband scoop chili into a bowl for her. The same hands that, an hour ago, had probably been holding another woman. The same face that, an hour ago, had been smiling at someone else. Emily ate in silence, giving one-word answers to Mark's questions. He talked about work, his boss, some project she wasn't listening. She looked at him and wondered when it had started, how long he had been lying to her, and most importantly, what she should do next. That night, as Mark slept, Emily lay with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She could make a scene, pack her bags and leave, demand a divorce, but none of those options felt right. A scene meant tears, yelling, broken dishes. It was a humiliation she wasn't going to allow herself. Leaving meant giving up the condo she had put half the money down on and starting from scratch at 36 with a child. A divorce meant a long, drawn-out legal battle, dividing assets. Trauma for Leo. No, Emily decided to do things differently. She turned on her side and looked at her sleeping husband. He was on his back, his mouth slightly open, snoring softly. So familiar, so routine, and so utterly alien. "You're going to regret this," Emily whispered, so quietly she could barely hear her own words. She didn't know how she would get her revenge yet, but she knew one thing for sure. It would be sweet. The next day, Emily went to see her friend. Brenda lived in the next town over, worked as an accountant for a small firm, and was married to Kevin, a quiet, unremarkable man everyone always seemed to forget. Brenda compensated for her husband's blandness with her own vibrant personality. She dyed her hair fiery red, wore huge earrings, and spoke loudly. "Men are bastards," Brenda stated flatly after listening to her friend's story. "Every last one of them. My Kevin's no exception. He just doesn't have the guts to get a mistress." "I'm not just going to let this go," Emily said. "Damn right. File for divorce, take the condo, kick him to the curb. No. I want him to understand. I want him to feel it." Brenda narrowed her eyes. "What are you planning?" Emily smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out soon," Emily began to observe. Not obviously, not intrusively, she just started paying closer attention. She watched Mark's phone, his schedule, the smallest changes in his behavior. Her husband suspected nothing. He continued to live as before, went to work, came home, ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. On weekends, they went grocery shopping together, sometimes to the movies. To an outsider, they were the perfect family. A week later, Emily learned her rival's name. It happened one evening while Mark was in the shower. His phone vibrated on the nightstand, and as Emily walked by, her eyes skimmed across the screen. A message from a contact saved as Steve. "Work. Miss you, handsome. When can I see you again? Steve. Work." Emily barely suppressed a smirk. He couldn't even be bothered to come up with something original. She memorized the number, and the next day, after Mark left for work, she looked it up online. Social media was an amazing thing. People post everything about themselves, where they live, where they work, who their friends are. Her name was Chloe Peters, 28, single, worked as a manager at the same company as Mark. In her photos, long, dark hair, bright makeup, revealing dresses, a stereotypical homewrecker from a cheap TV drama. Emily studied her profile from top to bottom. Chloe loved expensive restaurants, traveling, and mirror selfies. She posted quotes about strong, independent women and left heart emojis in the comments under pictures of other people's cats. In some photos, details appeared that Emily recognized: the watch she had given Mark for their anniversary, a corner of their kitchen, the view from their bedroom window. Chloe was documenting her happiness, not thinking for a second that this evidence could one day be used against her. "Idiot," Emily said aloud, scrolling through the feed. "You think he's going to marry you?" She leaned back in her chair and thought. A plan began to form in her head, still hazy like morning fog, but gaining sharper outlines with every passing hour. Leo came back from his grandmother's on Sunday, tan, cheerful, and smelling of the countryside and fresh air. Emily hugged him so tightly he protested. "Mom, enough! I'm a big kid now. I'm 11, almost a teenager. Soon it would be puberty," his voice breaking, his first crush. Emily looked at her son and understood that whatever she did, Leo must not get hurt. Mark hugged his son too, ruffled his hair, and asked about his break. He looked like a caring father, a loving husband. No one would suspect this man was leading a double life. "Dad, when are we going fishing?" Leo asked. "You promised." "Soon, son. As soon as I finish this project." "Project?" Emily smirked to herself. She knew perfectly well there was no urgent project. Mark was just using work as a cover for his meetings with Chloe. That evening, after Leo had gone to bed, Emily sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Mark sat down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. "Tired?" he asked. "A little. I've been meaning to say, you've seemed kind of distant lately. Is everything okay?" Emily turned and looked him in the eye. He looked genuinely concerned. He was either a superb actor, or he truly believed his little adventures had no effect on his family. "Everything's fine," she answered. "Just busy at work. Maybe you should take a vacation? The three of us could go somewhere." "Maybe." She stood up, kissed the top of his head, and went to the bedroom. Mark stayed in the kitchen, and Emily heard the quiet tapping of him typing a message on his phone, probably writing to her, his Chloe, explaining why he couldn't see her tomorrow. On Monday, Emily took a personal day and drove to her husband's office building. She had never done this before, not out of trust, she just hadn't seen the point. Now, there was a point. She sat in a coffee shop across from the glass-fronted building and watched the doors. During the lunch rush, employees spilled out onto the street, smoking, talking, hurrying to nearby cafes. Mark came out at 12:30, and he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was Chloe. In person, she looked even more striking than in her photos. A red dress, heels, her hair flowing over her shoulders. She was saying something to Mark, gesturing animatedly, and he was laughing the same laugh Emily hadn't heard in years. They went into a restaurant on the corner. Emily watched them go and finished her cold coffee. Strangely, she felt no pain, only a cold determination. Like a surgeon before a difficult operation, no emotions, just calculation. She took out her phone and took a picture of the restaurant. Then she looked it up online, checked the menu, the prices. Not cheap. So, Mark wasn't skimping on his passion. Emily remembered how, a month ago, she had asked him to buy her a new winter coat because her old one was worn out. Mark had winced and said it wasn't a good time for big expenses, but there was money for restaurants for his mistress. She smirked and left the coffee shop. It was time to start the plan. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Brenda asked when Emily laid out her idea. "Absolutely. It's harsh. He deserves it." Brenda fell silent, twisting a teaspoon in her fingers. "What if it doesn't work?" "It will work. I know him better than he knows himself." The plan was simple yet elegant. Emily wasn't going to make scenes, break dishes, or kick her husband out. She was going to make it so that he destroyed his own life. And she would just watch. The first step was to get to know Chloe. Not as a wife, of course, as a chance acquaintance, a friend, an ally. Emily had an advantage. Chloe didn't know what she looked like. Mark's social media pages had no family photos. He rarely posted anything at all. And the few pictures where Emily did appear were taken years ago, when she looked completely different, a short haircut, a different hair color, 20 pounds lighter. "You want to befriend her?" Brenda clarified. "Your husband's mistress?" "Exactly. Why?" Emily smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, nor a sad one. It was the smile of a woman who had made a decision and was ready to go to the end, to learn her weaknesses, to understand what she wants, and to give it to her. "I don't get it." "You will. Soon everyone will." Brenda shook her head but said nothing more. She had known Emily for years and understood that once she made up her mind, it was impossible to change it. That evening, Emily created a new social media account. She used stock photos of a pleasant-looking woman in her 30s, not a beauty, but not unattractive either. She filled out the profile: loves travel, yoga, self-help books. A typical modern city dweller. She chose a simple name: Olivia Miller. Olivia Miller. A woman who didn't exist, but who would soon become Chloe Peters' best friend. Emily sent Chloe a friend request and leaned back in her chair. The game had begun. Chloe accepted the friend request the next day. Emily wasn't surprised. Judging by her rival's profile, she added everyone, chasing follower counts. For the first week, Emily just watched. She liked Chloe's photos, sometimes leaving short comments. Beautiful dress. Great view. Where was this taken? Nothing intrusive, nothing suspicious. Just an active follower, of which Chloe had hundreds. In parallel, Emily studied her rival's daily routine. Chloe posted stories almost every hour. Her morning coffee, her commute, her lunch, her evenings out with friends. Her life was an open book, and Emily read it with the eagerness of a researcher. Chloe attended a fitness center on Garden Street every Tuesday and Thursday after work. She loved the cinnamon coffee shop near her office. On Saturdays, she got her nails done at the lady salon in the mall. Her best friend's name was Kira, and they were constantly fighting over some stupid old debt. Emily carefully wrote all of this down in a notebook. Knowledge is power. She was about to become very powerful. After 10 days, Emily decided it was time for action. She joined the same fitness center Chloe went to. She bought a 3-month membership, even though she hated gyms with their smell of sweat and loud music. But the sacrifice was worth it. On Tuesday evening, Emily arrived for the yoga class, rolled out her mat in the back row, and waited. Chloe appeared 5 minutes before it started. In person, she seemed younger than in her photos. Fresh skin, bright eyes, quick movements. Beautiful. Emily reluctantly admitted it. It was understandable why Mark had lost his head. The class went smoothly. Emily diligently performed the asanas, occasionally glancing at Chloe. Chloe was clearly irregular. She moved confidently, knew all the poses, and joked with the instructor. After class, Emily deliberately lingered in front of the mirror, pretending to fix her hair. Chloe was gathering her things nearby. "Excuse me," Emily said to her. "Could you tell me where the showers are? It's my first time, and I'm totally lost." Chloe looked up and smiled. It was a pleasant, open smile. Emily felt a pang of guilt but quickly suppressed it. "Of course. Follow me. I'm headed there too." They walked down the hallway together. Chloe chattered non-stop, talking about the gym, the instructors, the class schedule. Emily listened, nodded, and asked questions. "I'm Chloe, by the way." Her rival introduced herself as they reached the locker room. "Olivia," Emily replied, shaking the offered hand. The handshake was firm, confident. The hand of the woman sleeping with her husband. Emily squeezed her fingers a little tighter than necessary and then let go. "Nice to meet you, Olivia. Are you going to be coming regularly?" "I plan to. I need to get back in shape." "Tell me about it," Chloe laughed. "I've been coming for a year, and it really helps, for the body and the mind. It's so relaxing after work." "Where do you work, if you don't mind me asking?" "At Tech Prom. It's a tech company. I'm a manager. And you?" "I'm an accountant at a small firm. Boring, but stable." Emily deliberately chose a profession close to her real one. She worked as an economist at an engineering firm. It would be easier not to get mixed up in the details. They went into separate shower stalls, but the conversation continued through the partitions. Chloe complained about her boss, the traffic, the weather. Emily agreed and asked leading questions. "Are you married?" Chloe asked as they came out of the showers. "Divorced," Emily lied. 2 years now. "And you?" Chloe hesitated. Just for a second, but Emily noticed. "No, not married. I'm seeing someone, but it's complicated. Complicated relationships." "I get that," Emily said sympathetically. "My ex was complicated too. Turned out the complication was that he had another family." She said it in a light tone, as if it were a long-past story. Chloe gasped and pressed a hand to her chest. "Oh my God, that's horrible. You poor thing. How did you find out?" "By accident. I came home early one day." Emily watched Chloe's reaction. She turned pale, looked away. So, she understood what she was doing. She wasn't some naive fool, but a willing homewrecker. "That's awful," Chloe murmured. "Men can be such jerks." "Yes," Emily agreed. "But I don't regret it. It's better to know the truth than to live a lie." They exchanged phone numbers. Chloe suggested it herself, saying it would be more fun to go to classes together. Emily saved the number in her phone as Chloe Fitness and smiled. The first stage of the plan was complete. At home, Mark greeted her with a question. "Where have you been? It's almost 9. "At the gym," Emily answered truthfully. "I signed up for yoga. Decided to take care of myself." Mark raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You? At a gym? Since when?" "Since today." "Is there a problem?" "No, it's just unexpected." He looked at her strangely, as if seeing her for the first time. Emily walked past him to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and drank it in one gulp. "Did Leo do his homework?" she asked. Yeah, I checked it. Emily, are you sure you're okay? Perfectly. Why do you ask? I don't know. You've just been different lately. Emily turned and looked at her husband. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, looking concerned. Or guilty. It was hard to tell. People change, Mark. It's normal. She walked past him into the bedroom, leaving her husband standing there in confusion. Let him wonder. Let him be nervous. This was only the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily methodically built a friendship with Chloe. They went to yoga together, then started going to a coffee shop after class. Chloe turned out to be a talker. She spoke about her life with such openness that Emily sometimes felt uncomfortable. She learned that Chloe grew up in a small town, that her mother had died young, and her father drank and paid little attention to his daughter. Chloe had made her own way, working since she was 18, finishing college through online courses. She desperately wanted a family, children, stability, everything Emily herself had and that Chloe was trying to take from her. You see, Olivia, Chloe said, stirring sugar into her coffee, I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm 28. All my friends are married. They all have kids. And what about me? And your man? You said you were seeing someone. Chloe sighed. Emily feigned surprise. Married? How long have you been together? Almost a year. He says he's going to get a divorce. But you know how that goes. I do. Emily nodded. They all say that. You think he's lying? I don't know your man, but from experience, if a man wants a divorce, he gets one. If he's dragging his feet, it means he's perfectly happy with the way things are. Chloe frowned. Emily could see her words had hit their mark. Maybe you're right. But he's special. Not like the others. He's attentive, tender, caring. Emily barely held back a bitter laugh. Attentive and caring. The same Mark who forgot to wish her a happy birthday and didn't remember her favorite color. Does his wife know? She asked. No. He says she has no idea. She's one of those perfect domestic types. Stays home, takes care of the kid, doesn't notice a thing. Emily gripped her mug so tightly her knuckles turned white. Stays home. She worked 5 days a week, ran a household, raised a son, and still managed to take care of herself. And in her husband's eyes, she was a drab little housewife who doesn't notice a thing. Maybe she notices more than you think, Emily said quietly. What do you mean? I mean that women usually sense these things. It's just that not all of them decide to act on it. Chloe grew thoughtful. You know, sometimes I feel like what I'm doing is wrong, that I'm destroying a family. But then he comes over, he holds me, and I forget about everything. Have you thought about what will happen if his wife finds out? He says it's impossible, that he's careful. My ex thought so too, Emily said. And then I came home early. Chloe paled and set her cup down. That would be horrible. I don't even want to imagine it. You should think about your future, Emily said softly, covering Chloe's hand with her own. You deserve a man who will be only yours, not scraps from someone else's table. Chloe was silent. Emily could see the conflict of emotions in her eyes. Fear, doubt, hope. You're right, she finally said. You're probably right, but I don't know how to leave him. I love him, you know? Emily knew, and that was the main problem. Chloe loved Mark in her own desperate, feminine way, and Mark probably felt something for her too. Why else would he risk his family? But that didn't change the facts. He was her husband, the father of her child, and Emily wasn't going to give him up without a fight. When she got home, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time, looking at her reflection. An ordinary face, ordinary features. None of Chloe's beauty, none of her youth, but she had something else. 12 years of a shared life, a son they had in common, a home they had built together, and a cold, calculating mind that Chloe completely lacked. Emily smiled at her reflection. The plan was unfolding perfectly. A month passed. In that time, Emily and Chloe became real friends. At least, that's what Chloe thought. They texted every day, called each other, shared secrets, or rather, Chloe shared, and Emily listened and remembered. She learned everything. When Mark came to his mistress's apartment, what he gave her, the words he said. Chloe showed her his text messages, bragged about his gifts, and made plans for the future. Emily nodded, smiled, and felt a block of ice growing inside her. Mark brought Chloe flowers every week. Emily hadn't received flowers in 3 years. Mark took Chloe to the theater. She and Mark hadn't been to the theater since Leo was born. Mark told Chloe she was beautiful, smart, special. To Emily, he said the dinner was too salty. But she endured. She endured and waited for the right moment. The moment came in early October. Chloe called in the evening while Emily was washing dishes after dinner. Mark was in the living room with Leo, watching a football game. "Olivia, you won't believe it!" Chloe's voice was ringing with excitement. "He said he's going to get a divorce. He said he's going to talk to his wife next week." Emily almost dropped a plate. "Really?" She tried to keep her voice steady. "That's sudden. I'm in shock myself. We saw each other yesterday, and he was so serious. Said he was tired of the double life, that he wants to be with me, that his wife doesn't understand him, that they've been like strangers for a long time." Emily glanced toward the living room where her husband was sitting, the same husband who had supposedly worked late yesterday. "And you believe him?" she asked. "I do." This time he was different, not like before when he would just brush it off. He was specific. "Next week, after the holiday. They have some family date. He doesn't want to spoil it." A family date. Their wedding anniversary. In 5 days. 13 years together. "Congratulations," Emily said. "I hope it all works out." "Thanks, Olivia. You're a true friend. I would have given up long ago without you." They talked for a few more minutes, and then Emily hung up. Her hands were shaking. She wiped them on a towel and walked into the living room. Mark was on the couch, his arm around Leo. The game was on TV. A picture-perfect family evening. "Who was that?" Mark asked, not looking away from the screen. "Brenda. She wants to get together on Saturday." Emily sat in the armchair and stared at her husband. Next week, after their anniversary, he was going to announce their divorce like it was some routine piece of news. 13 years, and it was all ending like this. No, she wouldn't let him end it on his terms. The next day, Emily took the day off and went to Brenda's. Her friend opened the door in a robe, a face mask on. "What happened?" she asked, seeing the look on Emily's face. "He's going to divorce me." "What?" Emily walked into the apartment and sat down in the kitchen. She told her everything about Chloe, their friendship, the phone call from last night. Brenda listened in silence, her face growing paler. "Wait a minute," she said finally. "You've been talking to your husband's mistress for a month under a fake name? And she told you all this?" "Yes. Emily, that is." "Both genius and horrifying." "I know. So what now? Does he really want a divorce?" "It seems like it." Brenda stood up and poured them both a glass of bourbon. Emily drank hers in one gulp, not tasting it. "Listen," Brenda said. "Maybe it's for the best. You'll get half the condo, child support for Leo, start a new life." "No." "Why not? Why do you want that traitor?" Emily put her glass down on the table and looked her friend in the eye. "Because that would be too easy. He'd go off to his Chloe, be happy. And I'd be left with nothing." "No. Brenda, it's not going to happen like that." "Then what are you going to do?" Emily was silent for a few seconds, gathering her thoughts. "I'm going to make it so he doesn't want to leave me. And so that Chloe dumps him herself." "How?" "I don't know exactly yet, but I have some ideas." Their anniversary fell on a Saturday. Emily prepared for it meticulously. She booked an appointment at the salon, got her hair and nails done, and bought a new dress, not flashy and bright like Chloe's, but elegant and feminine. She took out the earrings Mark had given her for their 10th anniversary, which she rarely wore. When she came out of the bedroom that evening, Mark froze with his mouth open. You look stunning," he managed to say. "Thank you," Emily smiled. "It's 13 years, after all. We should celebrate." She had booked a table at an expensive restaurant, the same one Mark took Chloe to. She had chosen it specifically to see his reaction. Mark got nervous when he saw the sign. "Maybe we should go somewhere else?" he suggested. "This place is expensive." "It's fine. We can afford it. It's our anniversary." They went inside. Emily watched with satisfaction as her husband looked around, clearly afraid of running into someone he knew. "Relax," she said, taking his arm. "You're with me." The dinner was strange. Mark was tense, answered distractedly, and kept checking his phone. Emily pretended not to notice. She smiled a lot, talked about plans for the future, and reminisced about funny moments from their life together. "Remember how we met?" she asked over dessert. "At Steve's birthday party. You spilled wine on me and were so embarrassed you ran out to the balcony." Mark forced a smile. "I remember, and I followed you out. We stood there until morning, talking about everything. Yeah, that happened." Emily reached across the table and took his hand. "Mark, I want you to know, these 13 years have been the best of my life. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful to you for everything." He turned pale. "Emily, don't say anything. Just know." She saw his confusion, his bewilderment. He had expected anything but this. Not gratitude, not tenderness, not memories of happy times. When they got home, Mark couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Emily lay beside him, pretending to be asleep, and listened to his heavy breathing. The first blow had been struck. Now she had to follow through. The next day, she texted Chloe, "Hey, how are things? Haven't seen you in a while." The reply came an hour later. "Olivia, I'm in a terrible mood." He didn't say anything to his wife again. Said he couldn't, that things were too good. Some nonsense about their anniversary, about memories. "I don't understand anything." Emily smiled and typed her reply. "You poor thing. Let's meet up and talk." "Yes, please. I really need to vent." The game continued. They met at a coffee shop near the park. Chloe looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, dull skin, nervous movements. In a month, she seemed to have aged several years. "I don't understand what's happening," she said, clutching her mug with both hands. He was so determined, so sure. And then he came back and said he couldn't do it, that his wife was so beautiful, so sweet, that he remembered how they met. Emily listened and nodded sympathetically. "Maybe he just got scared?" she suggested. "Divorce is a big step." "But he was the one who suggested it. He said he was tired of lying. Men often say one thing and do another." Chloe sniffled. "I don't even know what I want anymore. Before, everything was clear. He would get a divorce, we would be together. And now, Olivia, tell me honestly, am I an idiot?" Emily paused, as if considering her answer. "You're not an idiot. You're a woman in love. Those are two different things. Sometimes I think they're the same thing." They sat in silence. Outside, a chilly autumn rain was falling. Passers-by hurried under umbrellas. Emily looked at Chloe and thought, there she is, the homewrecker. Not a monster, not a villain, just a lonely woman who wants to be loved. In another situation, they might have been real friends, but the situation was what it was. "You know what I think?" Emily said. "You need to give him an ultimatum." "An ultimatum?" "Yes. Tell him straight up. Either you file for divorce within a month, or we're through. Otherwise, this could drag on for years." Chloe thought about it. "What if he chooses her? Then you'll know the truth, and you can move on." "I'm scared, Olivia. I'm scared of losing him." "Are you sure he's even yours to lose?" "As long as he's married, he belongs to another woman." "You're just renting him." The words were harsh, but Chloe didn't take offense. She looked at Emily with gratitude, like a student looking at a wise teacher. "You're right. You're always right. I'll talk to him. Just not today. Wait a few days. Let him be the one to get nervous." "Why?" "Because right now, you're in a weak position. You're upset, vulnerable. He'll sense that and start pressuring you. You need to be strong." Chloe nodded. "Okay, I'll wait." They finished their coffee and parted ways. Emily walked home in the rain without opening her umbrella. The cold drops ran down her face, and it felt good, as if washing away all the filth that had accumulated over the past weeks. A surprise was waiting for her at home. Mark was sitting in the kitchen with a bouquet of flowers. "These are for you," he said, holding out a bunch of roses. "Just because." Emily took the bouquet and put it in a vase. Her hands were steady. "Thank you. They're beautiful." "Emily, I wanted to talk." She sat down across from him and looked him in the eye. Her heart was pounding, but she remained outwardly calm. "I'm listening." Mark paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About us? About our family. I realize I haven't been the best husband. I worked too much, didn't pay enough attention to you and Leo." "That's true," Emily agreed. I want to change that. Let's go somewhere for the weekend. The three of us, like we used to. We could go to that lodge up by the lake, remember? Emily remembered. They had gone there for their 5th anniversary. Leo was just a toddler then, and it was the first time he'd seen swans. Those were happy times. Okay, she said. Let's go. Mark's face lit up. Really? You'll go? Why not? Leo will be thrilled. He stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her. Emily let him hug her but didn't hug back. She just stood there like a wooden doll, waiting for him to let go. I love you, Mark whispered. You know that. I know, she replied. She didn't say, I love you too. And Mark noticed. The weekend at the lodge was almost perfect. Leo ran around the grounds, fed the swans, and went out in a rowboat. Mark was attentive and caring, the way he hadn't been in years. He held Emily's hand, looked into her eyes, gave her compliments, and Emily watched. She saw him secretly checking his phone, saw him frowning as he read a message, saw him step away to make a call, supposedly for work. On Sunday evening, after Leo was asleep, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. This was a good day, Mark said. Yes. Emily, I'm serious about changing things. I want us to be happy again. She turned to him. Were we unhappy? Mark hesitated. Well, not unhappy, but it was a routine, you know? The same thing every day. And what do you propose? I don't know. Maybe we need to spend more time together. Go out, travel. Emily smirked to herself. He was saying all the right things, but she knew that tomorrow he would go back to his Chloe, apologize for his silence, and explain that he was busy with family matters, and it would all start over again. Let's try, she said aloud. But it takes two. I want to, Emily. I really do. She nodded and turned back to the sunset. The sky was ablaze with orange and red. The lake reflected the fiery colors. It was beautiful, almost romantic. But Emily wasn't thinking about beauty. She was thinking that soon Chloe would give Mark an ultimatum, and then he would have to choose. The call from Chloe came on Wednesday. Olivia, I did it. Her voice trembled with a mix of excitement and fear. I talked to him, and he was stunned. I told him I'm giving him a month. If he doesn't file for divorce by then, it's over between us. Good for you. How did he react? At first, he got angry, said I was pressuring him, that it wasn't fair. But then, he understood, is not a promise. I know. But he said he would think about it. Think seriously. Olivia, I'm so nervous. That's normal. Now all you can do is wait. What if he chooses her? Emily paused. Then you'll know you did everything you could, and you can start moving on. You're so strong, Olivia. I wish I could be like you. You're stronger than you think. They said their goodbyes. Emily put down her phone and smiled. 1 month, 30 days to completely confuse Mark, 30 days to show him what he would lose if he left, and 30 days to open Chloe's eyes to the true face of her beloved. The game was entering the home stretch. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily went on the offensive on all fronts. She changed, both inside and out. She went to a stylist, got a new haircut, and updated her wardrobe, not drastically, but noticeably. Instead of shapeless sweaters, there were elegant blouses. Instead of old jeans, skirts, and dresses. She started wearing makeup, perfume, jewelry. Mark looked at her with unconcealed astonishment. You're practically glowing, he said one morning, watching her apply lipstick in the mirror. I decided it was time for some self-care. Long overdue. It looks good on you. Thanks. She smiled at him and left the house, leaving her husband in a state of confusion. Let him think. Let him wonder what was happening. Let him be afraid. At work, her colleagues noticed the changes too. Emily, are you in love or something? Asked Vera from the next desk. What makes you say that? You're just radiant. You've lost weight. You look great. Fess up. Who is he? Emily laughed. Nobody. I just decided to stop letting myself go. Vera didn't believe her but didn't press. And Emily thought, maybe she was in love not with a man, but with herself. The new, strong, decisive version of herself. The woman she had always wanted to be but was afraid to become. At the same time, she continued to work on Chloe. They met every few days. Emily listened attentively to her rival's complaints about Mark. gave advice, and offered support. Gradually, she began to weave small details into their conversations, details designed to sow doubt. "You know, a coworker of mine told me a similar story," Emily said over another cup of coffee. Her friend was also seeing a married man. He promised to divorce his wife for 5 years. 5 years. And then his wife got pregnant with their second child, and he stayed. Chloe turned pale. "You think he could do that?" "I don't know. You know him better. He says he loves you." My coworker said the same thing about her friend. Her man said he loved her too, and then it turned out he had another mistress on the side. "You think he could be cheating on me?" Chloe's voice trembled. "Chloe, he's cheating on his wife. With you. What's to stop him from cheating on you with someone else?" This thought had clearly never occurred to Chloe. She fell silent, and Emily saw a new emotion dawning in her eyes. Jealousy. "He's sometimes unreachable," Chloe said slowly. "Says he's in meetings or with his family. But you're not sure?" "I used to be sure. Now I don't know." Emily placed a hand on her shoulder. "I don't want to upset you. Maybe he is faithful to you, but you have to be prepared for anything." Chloe nodded, but her eyes were vacant. The seed of doubt had been planted. Now all that was left was to water it. At home, Emily behaved impeccably. She cooked Mark's favorite meals, was affectionate and attentive, and showed interest in his work. Not a single reproach. Not a single argument. The perfect wife. Mark didn't know how to react. He was used to the other Emily, tired, withdrawn, indifferent. This new wife both scared and attracted him. "Want to go to the movies on Saturday?" Emily suggested one evening. "We haven't been in a while." "Sure," Mark agreed. "What do you want to see?" "You pick. I trust your taste." He chose a romantic comedy, probably trying to please her. At the theater, they sat holding hands, just like they had years ago when they first started dating. Emily rested her head on his shoulder and felt him tense up. "Something wrong?" she whispered. "No, everything's fine. It's just been a long time since we've done this. I like it too." After the movie, they walked through the city, got ice cream, and laughed. Mark told funny stories from work. Emily shared news about Leo, an almost happy couple. But that night, as Mark slept, Emily lay awake, thinking how easy it would be to forgive him, to forget about Chloe, the lies, the betrayal, and go back to their old life. But she knew their old life was gone forever. Even if Mark stayed, she would never be able to look at him the same way. The crack had appeared, and no amount of love could mend it. On the 3rd week, something happened that Emily hadn't expected. Chloe called her, in tears. "Olivia, I need to see you. Now." "What happened?" "Not over the phone. Please, just come." Emily rushed to the coffee shop and was there in half an hour. Chloe was sitting in a corner, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out as soon as Emily sat down. The world around them froze. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. "Pregnant?" she repeated, her voice hoarse. "Yes. The test showed 2 lines. I did 3 tests, all positive. And what are you going to do?" Chloe sniffled. "I don't know. I wanted a baby, but not like this. Not while he's still married." Emily sat motionless, trying to process what she'd heard. A baby. Mark was going to have a child with another woman. This changed everything. "Have you told him yet?" she asked. "No. I'm scared. What if he tells me to get rid of it? And you want to keep it?" Chloe fell silent. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "I'm 28, Olivia. I want a family. I want kids. Maybe this is my chance." "A chance for what? To be a single mother?" "He wouldn't leave me with a baby. He's not a monster." Emily barely restrained a bitter laugh. Not a monster. A man who had been lying to his wife for a year was not a monster. "Chloe, listen to me carefully," she said, leaning closer. "Before you make any decisions, you need to know the truth." "What truth?" "The truth about him. About who he really is." Chloe looked at her, uncomprehending. "I don't know what you mean." Emily took her hand. "Do you know where he lives?" "No. He never told me the address. Said it was for my own safety." "And what's his wife's name?" "Emily. Maria, I think." "And his last name?" Chloe thought. "He never said." "Strange, isn't it?" Very strange. A year together and you don't know his address or his last name. I never thought about it. Maybe it's time you did. Emily could see the pieces starting to click into place in Chloe's mind. A year-long relationship with a complete lack of information, promises of divorce and endless excuses, love and secrecy. What are you suggesting? Chloe asked. That you find out more about him. Before you have a baby with a man, you should know who he is. How? Emily paused, considering her next move. The situation had changed drastically. A pregnancy was no joke. This was a human life. Innocent in all of this. Do you have a picture of him? She asked. Yes, a few. Here. Chloe took out her phone and scrolled through her gallery. Emily looked at the photos of her husband, so familiar and so alien. Here he was, smiling for the camera. Here, hugging Chloe. Here, sitting in a restaurant with a glass of wine. He's handsome, isn't he? Chloe said. Yes, Emily replied. He is. She handed the phone back and stood up. I have to go, but we'll talk again. Okay. Olivia, what should I do? Emily looked at her. At this woman who had stolen her husband, her family, her peaceful life, the woman who was now carrying Mark's child. Wait a few days, she said. Don't make any rash decisions, and don't say anything to him until you're sure. Sure of what? That he deserves to be the father of your child. Emily left the coffee shop and stood on the street for a long time, staring into space. The plan was falling apart. Everything she had devised now seemed petty and meaningless. A baby. The word beat in her mind like a trapped bird. What now? Emily didn't sleep all night. She lay next to a sleeping Mark and stared at the ceiling, trying to collect her thoughts. A baby changed everything. It was one thing to break up an affair, to separate a husband from his mistress, to prove to him that family was more important. It was another thing entirely to deprive a child of a father before it was even born. Emily thought of Leo, of the years she had raised him with Mark. His first steps, his first words, his first scraped knees. She thought of how Mark had taught him to ride a bike, how they had built Lego sets together, how they watched cartoons on Sunday mornings. A bad husband didn't necessarily mean a bad father. Emily understood that. And somewhere inside her, something new stirred. Not pity for Chloe, she had chosen her own path, but pity for the child who was not yet born and was already a hostage to the mistakes of others. By morning, Emily had made a decision. She would finish what she had started, but she would do it differently. She called Brenda that morning. She's pregnant, Emily said without any preamble. Brenda swore. Wow, what a plot twist. So what now? I don't know. I'm thinking. Emily, listen, maybe it's time to stop. Get a civilized divorce, take what's yours, and walk away. No. Why? Emily paused, choosing her words. Because this isn't just about me anymore. And it's not just about him. It's about the baby. I don't get it. Chloe needs to know the truth, not the version I wanted to show her. The real truth, which is that Mark isn't some fairy tale prince, that he's a normal man with his own weaknesses and lies. She needs to make her decision knowing everything. Brenda sighed. You're going to tell her everything? That you're his wife? Yes. That's a huge risk. She could run to Mark, cause a scene. Everything will blow up. Let it. I'm done with this circus. Emily arranged to meet Chloe on Saturday. She chose a quiet cafe in a different part of town where no one would know them. Chloe arrived, looking pale and drawn. The pregnancy wasn't visible yet, but something about her had changed. There was a new fragility, a vulnerability. You wanted to talk? She said, sitting down across from Emily. I'm listening. Emily looked at her for a long time without saying a word. Chloe shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Olivia, you're scaring me. What is it? My name isn't Olivia, Emily said quietly. What? My name is Emily. I'm Mark's wife. Silence. Chloe sat motionless, as if paralyzed. Only her eyes widened in horror. What? She whispered. Is this a joke? No, I'm his wife. We've been married for 13 years. Our son is Owen's. Chloe slowly stood up, knocking over her chair. She was shaking. You've been spying on me? Yes. Why? I wanted to understand who my husband was cheating on me with. I wanted revenge. This is insane. You're crazy. Emily didn't move. Maybe. Please, sit down. We need to talk. I have nothing to talk to you about. You're carrying my husband's child. We have plenty to talk about. Chloe froze, then slowly picked up the chair and sat back down. Her hands were trembling. Why did you do it? She asked. Pretend to be my friend for a month. Why? At first, I wanted to destroy your relationship, to make you break up with him yourself. And then I found out about the baby and realized this wasn't a game anymore. Chloe buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders began to shake. I didn't know he had a son, she whispered through her tears. He told me he didn't have any kids, that his wife didn't want them. Emily felt a surge of rage. Didn't want kids. She had cried with joy when she found out she was pregnant. She had carried Leo for 9 months while working full-time. She had been in labor for 20 hours and almost died from blood loss. He lied, she said in an even voice. He lied to you about a lot of things. Why? Because it's easier that way. It's easier to paint his wife as a cold woman who doesn't understand his sensitive soul. It's easier to invent an unhappy marriage than to admit he just wanted some variety. Chloe lifted her tear-stained face. Do you hate me? Emily thought about it. She should, but for some reason, she didn't. You're just as much a victim of his lies as I am. I'm not a victim. I knew he was married. Yes. But you didn't know everything. And I knew and said nothing. We're both at fault. They sat in silence, looking at each other. 2 women, connected by one man, the wife and the mistress, the mother of his child and the mother of his future child. What are you going to do? Chloe asked. I don't know. I thought I wanted revenge, but now I realize revenge won't change anything. What do you want? Emily looked out the window. Outside, life went on as usual. People hurried about their business. Cars drove down the street. Children played in a park. The normal life of normal people. The truth, she said finally. I want everything to be honest. Are you going to tell Mark about us? About these meetings? Yes, I'll tell him everything. Chloe nodded. He's going to be furious. Let him. He deserves it. They stayed at the cafe for another 2 hours, talking without masks, without pretense. Emily told her about her life with Mark, about Leo, about how she discovered the affair. Chloe told her version how they met at a company party, how he pursued her, how he promised her the world. The stories didn't match up. The Mark in Chloe's story was a different person, romantic, passionate, unhappy in his marriage. The Mark in Emily's story was an ordinary husband, not good, not bad, just tired of the routine. Which one of us knows the real Mark? Chloe asked. Maybe neither of us. Maybe he doesn't even know himself. When they left the cafe, it was getting dark. They stood on the sidewalk, unsure how to say goodbye. What have you decided about the baby? Emily asked. I'm keeping it, no matter what. Even if he doesn't leave me. Even then, this is my baby. I can handle it. Emily nodded. At that moment, she felt something for Chloe that resembled respect. Not sympathy. No. But respect for a woman who was ready to take responsibility for her choices. Good luck, she said. You too. They walked away in opposite directions. Emily walked home, thinking about what awaited her that evening. The talk with Mark, the confession, the fight. She was ready. Mark was in the kitchen eating dinner when Emily got home. Leo was at a friend's house for a sleepover. They had arranged it in advance. Hey, Mark said, not looking up from his plate. Where have you been? We need to talk. Something in her voice made him wary. He put down his fork and looked at his wife. What happened? Emily sat across from him. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. She had been preparing for this conversation for weeks. I know about Chloe. Silence. Mark turned pale but didn't look away. What, Chloe? Don't. I know everything. About your meetings, the restaurants, about you bringing her to our home when I'm not here. Emily, I don't understand. You do. I saw her shoes in the entryway 2 months ago when I came home early. Red patent leather. Mark was silent. The mask of confusion slowly slipped from his face, replaced by something else. Fear? Anger? Relief? Why didn't you say anything then? He finally asked. I wanted to understand who I was dealing with. I wanted to get to know her. Get to know her? How? Emily smirked. I met her. Introduced myself with a different name. We became friends. Mark stared at her as if she were insane. What? You've been talking to my mistress for 2 months? She told me everything. How you met, what you promised her, how tender and attentive you are. This is crazy. You wouldn't. I would. And I did. And today, I told her everything. She knows who I am. Mark jumped up from his chair, his face turning purple. Are you out of your mind? Why? Because I'm done with the lies. For everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. He paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Emily watched him calmly, almost detached. She's pregnant, she said. Mark froze. What? Chloe is pregnant. You're going to be a father. Again, he slowly sank back into his chair. His hands were shaking. She told you? Yes. Before she knew who I was. And what is she going to do? Keep the baby. Mark buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, and Emily realized with surprise that he was crying. In 12 years of marriage, she had only seen him cry once, at his father's funeral. Emily, I didn't want this. His voice broke. I didn't plan it. It just happened. A year-long affair just happens? I got tangled up. She was so different. She admired me. She listened. And me what? He looked up, his eyes red and wet. You stopped seeing me. We were living like roommates. Work in the morning, TV at night, sleep. No intimacy, no real conversation. And instead of talking to me, you found someone else? I tried. You would just brush me off, say you were tired. I was tired. Work, the house. Leo, it was all on me. And you would come home and collapse on the couch. There. That's what I'm talking about. Constant complaints, constant dissatisfaction. They were yelling at each other for the first time in years. All the unsaid resentments, all the swallowed words, came pouring out. You could have gotten a divorce, Emily shouted. You could have honestly said you wanted to leave. And you would have let me go? With Leo? With the condo? So it was easier to lie? I didn't know what I wanted. I thought it would pass, that I'd get it out of my system and come back. Get it out of your system? She's not a toy. And I'm not a toy. Mark fell silent. He sat back down, holding his head in his hands. What now? He asked hoarsely. Emily fell silent too. The anger receded, leaving an emptiness. I don't know, she answered honestly. I really don't know. They sat in the kitchen until late into the night, talking now without yelling, without accusations, just talking. Mark told her how the affair started. Randomly, at a company party. Chloe was new, fun, enthusiastic. She looked at him like he was the center of the universe. After years of a routine marriage, it was intoxicating. I wasn't planning on anything serious, he said. I thought we'd flirt a bit and that would be it. But then, it just pulled me in. Do you love her? Mark was silent for a long time. I don't know. I feel good with her. It's easy. She doesn't make demands, doesn't criticize. Because you're a special occasion for her. You show up, give her flowers, take her to a restaurant. I'm the daily grind. Dirty socks, unwashed dishes, parent-teacher conferences. That's not fair. It's the truth. You're comparing a holiday to everyday life and you're surprised that everyday life loses. He thought about that. Maybe you're right. I know I'm right. But that doesn't change anything. Emily stood up and poured herself a glass of water. Her throat was dry from all the talking. What do you want? She asked without turning around. Honestly, I don't know. Then think about it. You have time. How much? As much as you need. But while you're thinking, go live somewhere else. Mark looked up. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave. Temporarily. I need to be alone. What about Leo? We'll tell Leo that Dad's on a business trip. For now, he nodded, stood up, and walked over to her. Emily. Don't. Not now. He tried to hug her, but she moved away. Not sharply. Just a step back. I'll pack a bag, he said. Okay. Mark left that same night. He packed a suitcase, took his documents, his car keys. He paused in the doorway. Will you call? If something comes up, I'll call. I love you, Emily. Despite everything, she didn't answer. She just closed the door behind him and leaned her back against it. Empty. The apartment, her soul, her head, all empty. Emily walked into the bedroom and lay down on the bed without getting undressed. There were no tears, only a vast, bottomless exhaustion, like an ocean. She had thought she would feel relief, or triumph, or at least the satisfaction of the truth finally being out. But she felt nothing. The revenge she had so carefully planned had turned out to be hollow. Mark was gone, but she didn't feel any better. Chloe knew the truth, but what had changed? The baby would still be born. The family was still broken. Or was it? Emily closed her eyes and tried to imagine the future. Divorce. Dividing assets. Leo with his dad on weekends. A new life at 36. Or forgiveness. An attempt to glue the pieces back together. She didn't know what she wanted. For the first time in months, she had no idea. 3 weeks passed. Mark was staying with a friend. He called every day. At first, Emily didn't answer. Then she started picking up, responding curtly, only if it was about practical matters. He asked about Leo, the house, her. She gave one-word answers and hung up. Leo noticed something was wrong. At 11, he wasn't a little kid anymore. He understood more than adults gave him credit for. "Mom, is Dad really on a business trip?" he asked one evening. "Yes, honey." "Why so long?" "A lot of work." Leo looked at her intently, with an almost adult gaze. "Did you guys have a fight?" Emily wanted to lie, but she couldn't. Not to those eyes, so much like Mark's. "A little," she admitted, "but it's grown-up stuff. We'll figure it out." "Are you getting a divorce?" The word hit her hard, even though she'd been thinking it herself every day. "I don't know, Leo. I honestly don't know." Her son nodded and went to his room. Emily heard him close the door and turn on his computer, probably playing his games, hiding from reality, just like all of them were hiding. Chloe called a week after their conversation. "I need to see you," she said. "Please." Emily agreed. She didn't know why, but she agreed. They met at the same cafe where Emily had revealed the truth. Chloe looked better than last time, a healthy color in her cheeks, a sparkle in her eyes. The pregnancy was starting to show. "I wanted to apologize," Chloe said as soon as they sat down. "For everything. Apologies don't change anything." "I know. But it's important for me to say it. I didn't think of you as a real person. You were just an obstacle. The wife who was in the way of our happiness. But you're real. You have a son. A life." Emily listened in silence. "He called me," Chloe continued. "After you told him everything. He was furious. Yelled that I had betrayed him, that I'd told a stranger about our relationship. Funny, isn't it? He was accusing me of betrayal. He's a master at shifting blame. I see that now. You were right. I didn't know the real Mark, only the version he showed me." Chloe paused, turning her cup in her hands. "I told him it's over between us." Emily raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Why?" "Because I realized he was never mine. And he never will be. Even if he had gotten a divorce. What then? Live with a man who lied to 2 women at the same time? Wait for him to find a third? And the baby?" Chloe placed a hand on her stomach. "This is my baby. I'll manage on my own. My mom did, and so will I. Are you going to tell him?" "I already did. He offered me money for an abortion." Emily clenched her fists. Even now, knowing everything about her husband, she hadn't expected such a low blow. "And what did you say?" "I told him where to go." In no uncertain terms. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt something like a smile. "Good for you." They sat in the cafe for a long time, talking about life, about plans, about the future. A strange conversation between a wife and a mistress, but the strangeness had ceased to be surprising. "Are you going to forgive him?" Chloe asked before she left. "I don't know. Would you?" "No, but I didn't live with him for so many years. I don't have a child with him, a shared history. It's harder for you, or maybe easier. When you know someone that long, you see more clearly who they really are." Chloe nodded and stood up. "Thanks for agreeing to meet. I know I don't deserve it. Maybe you don't. But I needed this too." They parted not as friends, but not as enemies either. Like 2 women whom fate had thrown together and then pulled apart, leaving scars on both. Mark came back a month later. Not for good. just to talk. Emily opened the door and barely recognized him. He had lost weight, looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. Stubble, a wrinkled shirt, nothing like the well-groomed man who had dated Chloe. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Leo's at school." "I know. I wanted to talk to you." She let him in. They sat in the kitchen, where it had all begun. "I've done a lot of thinking," Mark said. "Every day, every night. About us, about what I did. And what did you conclude? That I was an idiot. A complete, absolute idiot." Emily didn't argue. "I lost everything," he continued. "My family, my son's respect, you. And for what? For an affair that meant nothing. It meant enough to last a year. It was an illusion, an escape from reality. I was running from our problems instead of facing them. So what now?" Mark looked her in the eye. "I want to come home. If you'll let me." Emily was silent for a long time. Outside, a light, dreary autumn rain was falling. Droplets traced paths down the window pane like tears. "You know she's keeping the baby," she said finally. "I know. And what are you going to do?" "I'll support them financially. It's my child. I have a responsibility." "She told you to get lost." "Yes, but I'll still help. I'll open an account, transfer money. She might not want my involvement, but the child is not to blame for any of this." Emily nodded. It was the right thing to do. Maybe the first right decision Mark had made in a long time. "And Leo?" she asked. "How will you explain to him that he has a half-brother or sister from another woman?" Mark lowered his head. "I don't know. I'll tell him the truth when the time is right. The truth that Dad cheated on Mom. Yes, he deserves to know. He's 11. I'll wait, but I won't lie to him." They sat in silence. Emily got up and walked to the window. She watched the rain and thought about how strange life was. 2 months ago, she had wanted revenge. She had wanted to destroy Mark, annihilate Chloe, restore justice, and now she stood by the window and felt nothing but exhaustion. The revenge was empty. It brought no satisfaction, healed no wounds, only created new ones. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, not turning around. "Honestly, I don't know. I understand, but I'm willing to try. For Leo, for what we had." Mark stood up and came to stand beside her. He didn't hug her, didn't touch her, just stood there. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is going to be a long road, and I'm not promising we'll make it to the end." "I'm ready." Emily finally turned to him. "Ready for what? For therapy? For me bringing this up for years? For the fact that trust won't come back overnight? For all of it. We'll see." A year passed. Mark moved back home, but for the first few months, he slept on the couch. They went to a marriage counselor every week, without fail. They were learning to talk, to listen, to understand. It was hard. There were setbacks, arguments, nights when Emily lay awake thinking, "Why am I putting up with this?" There were moments when she wanted to throw it all away, file for divorce, and start over. But there were other moments too. Mark making her breakfast in bed for the first time in years. Leo, happy that his family was back together. Evenings when the three of them watched a movie, just like they used to. Chloe had a baby girl. Emily found out by accident, seeing a photo on social media. Chloe had unfriended Olivia Miller, but her profile was still public. Mark transferred money every month, anonymously, to an account he'd set up for the child. Chloe either didn't know who the money was from, or pretended not to. Leo didn't know about his half-sister yet. Emily and Mark decided to tell him when he was older, or when he asked, or when the time felt right. Trust returned slowly, drop by drop, crumb by crumb. Emily was learning to trust her husband again. Mark was learning to be worthy of that trust. One evening, a year after that terrible conversation, they were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea. Leo was long asleep. The first snow of the season was falling outside. "Are you happy?" Mark asked. Emily thought for a moment. "I don't know, but I feel at peace. And maybe that's more important." "I love you." "I know." She didn't say, "I love you too." Maybe one day she would. Maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't matter. Emily watched the falling snow and thought about what a strange thing life is. Sometimes it breaks us. Sometimes it makes us stronger. Sometimes it takes what we thought was ours and gives us something unexpected in return. She hadn't forgiven Mark completely. Maybe she never would. The scar would always be there, a reminder that even the people closest to you are capable of betrayal. But she had learned to live with that scar. She had learned not to let the past poison the present. She had learned to appreciate what she had, instead of mourning what was lost. The revenge she had so carefully planned had turned out to be unnecessary. The truth had been stronger than any revenge, more painful, and more healing. Emily finished her tea and smiled. For the first time in a long time, a real smile. Life went on. Dear listeners who have accompanied me until the end of my story, how did you find today's tale? I'm curious about the impression it has left in your hearts, and the thoughts it has sparked in you. Please feel free to share your impressions and opinions in the comments. I will carefully read each of them. The likes and subscriptions you give me are the greatest source of strength and motivation for creating better stories in the future. Please don't forget to do so. I sincerely wish that your life is always filled with happiness and good fortune, and that the warm light in your hearts never fades.